It was one of those stories that you just shook your head and you couldn't believe what you were reading. It was written by Todd Frankel in the newspaper. STLTODAY.com is where you can read it. And Todd Frankel, the author of this story, joins us now via Skype. Good morning, Todd Frankel. Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Good morning.
All right. So the story is about a man who lives in Cape Girardeau who is a meth addict. It was a feature article. Tell us how you found the story.
He was on, one of our court reporters knew about him down in Cape Girardeau and sort of been following his story lightly, tangentially. And he actually was on Twitter a lot, sort of tweeting out his story during the summer. And I just started following him, and I've actually been after him for a couple months to share his story, and he finally agreed.
He was a crime reporter addicted to meth.
Yeah. And the irony was not lost on him. I mean, he fully realized how peculiar a situation that was.
The headline really grabs you. The headline says, "He lost it all to meth, the marriage, the money, the job covering crime." Take us from the beginning. How did this guy, who had everything, a family, a wife, a kids, a great job, and he's now basically homeless? What happened?
He actually came to drugs sort of late in life. I mean, he didn't start using or even trying drugs until he was about 30. And it was, dabbling here and there. And actually, what I think was sort of interesting is he tried pretty much every drug that was out there. I mean, he tried crack, he tried coke, he tried heroin, he tried methadone, benzos, opiates. He tried them all. But the one that really led to his downfall, that really did the unraveling, was meth. And so we hear a lot about, these different drugs that are out there and the meth epidemic. And it's sort of, I thought, revealing that the one that undid him, and because he did have it all. He was married to a doctor. He didn't really have to work. He loved his job as a court reporter, crime reporter down in the Cape. But, he didn't have to work. He had a good family. He admits he had it all. There was no reason for him to do this.
One of the things that I kept coming back to in this story, Todd Frankel, is that you think of meth addicts as high school kids, college kids with nothing to do, nowhere to go, and so they end up getting hooked on meth. How did he go from being a normal functioning member of society to meth? It's just so bizarre.
Yeah, I don't think there was like one moment where he's like, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. I think it's, especially for someone who has an addictive personality, you just try one thing and, a lot of people, they can try it and put it away. They can, as he called them, weekend warriors. And he sort of hated those people because they could do what he couldn't do, which was put it down. But I think there's like an alcoholic, there's some people who can drink to excess on the weekends and go to work. There's some people who can use drugs and be okay.
And he has a couple of brothers also too that have dealt with some drug issues as well, right?
Yeah. Both his brothers were meth addicts, and he'd actually helped them, or tried to help them through the process. Actually took one of his brothers to rehab the very first time, and he was known as the good brother. And so, what was really sort of revealing is that he knew the consequences of trying meth. I mean, he knew what it could do, and the lure of the drug was still too much for him. So
he gets divorced. His wife gives him a lump sum of $250,000.
Yeah, she was apparently doing pretty well, and that's what he wanted. I mean, he actually, I think he told me he threw out a number, never expected that it would fly, and and to him, he says that was the worst thing that could. I mean, yeah.
At the end of the story, and not to give it all away, but you kind of allude to the fact that he tried rehab just to appease the judge, and then once the judge was appeased, he sort of you sort of leave it open-ended, like there's a part 2 coming, but almost like he ran off into the sunset looking for his next fix.
Well, yeah, I mean, the story only unfolded 2 weeks ago, so it's still playing out. He has sentencing later this month now. And so we'll see what happens. Yeah, it is a ongoing story. There is no clear ending to it yet.
Did you get to talk to him about the whole meth epidemic here in the region? Him having a unique perspective of covering the meth crime down there. Now being a meth addict, did you talk to him at all about how to solve the meth problem or the intricacies of the meth problem?
I don't think he had much in the way of solutions, but he certainly said that it was much more prevalent than he would have even suspected, from when he went from one side of the bar to the other. He realized now that it literally was everywhere, which is he was surprised even for him. Yeah.
You know what's interesting to me when I was reading it, that he obviously hit rock bottom going to court, but for him, he goes, who goes to court without socks? He had no socks to wear. And then he sees his replacement, the new court reporter that's, covering his beat, walk in, and he knew, the judge and the prosecutor. It's just
really sad.
Really sad.
Todd, did you have a hard time? Because the piece is well written, and it's not, you're not sympathetic to him, but there's a fine line as a writer. You want to tell his story, but you don't want his story to be, you don't want to come off feeling sorry for the guy, because he is his own worst enemy, more or less.
Sure. Yeah, I tried hard actually to sort of almost tell it from his perspective. Almost, not. I mean, obviously not within that, but I don't think he has. I think he both wants sympathy and realizes that he totally doesn't deserve it, and that he brought this on himself. He's self-aware that way.
Did he shake and bake? Did he go to a meth lab? Was he waiting around Walgreens for the latest cold medicine pack? That
was interesting, is that he never shaked and baked himself, and he actually said he didn't really know anyone who was a chemist. And that was one thing I thought was very interesting, because that's what we hear a lot about the meth labs, and everyone apparently is making this in their pocket, right? But he said he never did that, and he didn't say this directly, but my intuition was that he was saying that this was something, you hear about the super labs in Mexico or wherever, it comes from someplace else, that this wasn't something that was being made in someone's den or something like Breaking Bad or whatever. So it's interesting.
And he just stands on the street corner waiting for the connection to sort of come by and give him his meth.
Yeah, well, drug dealers, they deliver. I mean, they're willing to come to you. When his car broke down in the story, and he's waiting for the guy to bring him a gas can, it sort of recalled for him the times he would sit in parking lots waiting for drug dealers to come bring and you'd be on drug dealer time, which meant that they might never show up because, well, they were drug dealers, or they might have gotten arrested. So no, drug dealers deliver. They'll bring it to you. They're full service operations.
Todd Frankel, it's a scary story. It's a great story. Are you planning on following up and keeping us informed on what happens to Scott Moyers?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, the public response has been terrific. People have been very interested in his story. And yeah, certainly we will be following up to see what happens later this month.
As a writer, do you read the comments at the end of the story? Because I don't. I avoid them like the plague, except I started reading some of your comments, or not your comments, but the comments on your story, and they're really fascinating in this instance.
Yeah, I like you tend to avoid the comments. There's sort of a saying in the newsroom: don't read the comments. But yeah, in this story, they actually were sort of interesting, because people actually decided to have a discussion rather than just yelling at each other about Obama or whatever.
Right. Yeah. Todd Frankel, a great piece. It's posted at STLTODAY.com. Great job. Thanks for checking in via Skype.
Oh yeah, thank you so much.
You got it. 7:30. It's a story that appeared, I guess, over the weekend in the Post. Todd Frankel looked at this Scott Moyers, who was a father, a husband,